In this video, we're going to have a go at refurbishing this old D Jetronic pump which came off our parts car. These older style D Jetronic pumps work at lower pressure than the newer style pumps, plus they have different size fittings, so they're not interchangeable with the newer pumps. I'm going to leave these motor parts here in a little bath of evaporust, get rid of that rust without scrubbing it in any way, shape or form. The evaporust is quite harmless to touch, but it is very good at removing rust. I don't know if evaporust is the way to go with these fuel pumps, but we'll soon find out. We're just going to take out these little bits. You can see quite a lot of gunk has actually come off there. We are going to use evaporust. It's really important that after you use it, you wash the piece in warm water and get rid of any residue. Just very gently going to go over this with a Dremel tool on very low speed. These little Dremel tools allow you to get into these little bits here. These little fuel pump parts here are about as clean as we're going to get them. I'm not sure what this material is. It is magnetic, but it almost looks like some kind of brass alloy. That just leaves this little baby here. Now, obviously we can't clean the inside of this, we just got to run fuel through it, and my concern is that this is so corroded here. This little fitting is so corroded that I'm tempted just to leave it be. It's not leaking, you can't get those parts anymore, and that there actually has a check valve built into it to keep the fuel pressure up. So on these old D Jetronic systems, if you find that you've left the car for a few hours or a few days and then it's difficult to start it again, it's probably because that check valve there has failed and is not maintaining fuel pressure for you. But I think what we're going to do in the first instance is just go over the outside of this, put the thing back together so we don't get any dirt or dust inside it. So the O-rings which fit in here, these are the old ones. You can see they're quite flat. They are, I believe, 33 by 2 mil. And that fits in there. And then this here goes on top of that. You can still see the orientation of which way round it goes, just about. If you put that on, you can drop the little vein in the middle there. It only goes in one way. And then these will just all slot in, like so. It's quite an ingenious design. I don't think they make pumps like this anymore, but it amazes me that these wet pumps actually have fuel running through the inside of them. Okay, once you've got that on, the other O-ring fits in there. You can just still see the outline of where that lines up. Take that camera back a bit. And that fits on there like so. These screws here are M4 16mm. They're stainless steel screws which we got from Westfield Fasteners, and I will at the end of this video, as with all our videos, just let you know where I got everything and what we paid for it. When you come to tighten these screws up, make sure you do it in a crisscross pattern. Don't be tempted just to tighten one screw at a time, otherwise it won't seal properly. You don't have to go crazy on these screws. There we go. So now we're just going to plug the two ends of this, go over this with a wire wheel, get some of this loose rust off. We're just going to put this fuel pump in here now. We've covered the bottom up here with polythene, cling wrap, gloves, elastic bands as best we can, because we don't really want to get any evaporust inside the body of the motor. It wouldn't be a tragedy if we did, because we're going to be running petrol through that shortly, but you definitely don't want to try and run water through these motors. Well, you couldn't anyway, they'd short circuit. Just going to leave that for a day or so and see if we can get the majority of that rust off, and then we'll go over it with a wire brush again. We may try and paint the outside, I haven't decided yet. Then we'll run some petrol through the pump and then we'll put it on the car. So this pump has been sitting in the evaporust for a day, and you can see that we're starting to see a little bit of colour coming back to the pump. It's still heavily rusted at the bottom there, so we may leave it sitting for another day or so. We can't submerge it all the way in, so we're going to get this evaporust line up here, but I should be able to get rid of that just with a wire wheel. So Before we can start, we have to suck some fuel through here, otherwise there's just air in that line. It's not going to work, which I've done. Now I've got a horrible taste of fuel in my mouth. When I press this here, the pump should come on and we should start pumping. It stopped raining, so we're going to go for our second attempt. Now, the first time we tried to do this, nothing happened. Inside that tube there is a spring, and at the bottom of the spring is a little ball bearing, and that is the check valve, which is built into this little part here. And if that ball bearing is not moving freely or is stuck, which was the case when we first tested this pump, you put fuel in the top of the pump here, but nothing will come out the bottom of it. And we freed that up, everything's working fine. You can see that the nut there is absolutely corroded, and I'm not even going to attempt to get that out because they don't sell this fitting anymore. You could make up a fitting which doesn't have a built-in check valve and then put a check valve in the line, but I'm not going to do that. I'm working on the principle, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So there you go, you can see that this pump is working absolutely fine. I'm going to say that's job done on the pump refurbishment. We've cleaned it up, we've replaced the seals, there were no obvious leaks. The pump's pumping absolutely fine, sounds great. There's an awful lot better than it was. It's not perfect, so I think the last thing I will do is just spray this with silver rust encapsulator. We haven't managed to get all the rust off, and that will ensure that it doesn't rust any further in the future. Clean it up to the best of our ability, masked it off. We're going to go over now with some Eastwood rust encapsulator matte silver. We'll wait for that to dry, give it a couple more thin coats, and that should be not quite as good as new, but an awful lot better than it was before. If you do decide to paint your pump, don't make the mistake I did. There's still residual petrol in the pump after we tested it, and of course that leaked out and stripped the paint off, so we should have actually hung the pump up the other way around so any petrol leaked out from the top where there's no paint. It's the next day, we've finished painting that fuel pump, and I hope you'll agree that looks a million times better. We've just test fitted everything, haven't tightened everything down yet. I'm just going to finish this video with where we got the various fittings from. They're all stainless steel fittings, the bolts, the screws, the hose clamps, etc. And in the next video, we'll be hopefully putting the fuel tank in and hooking these fuel lines up to the pulsation dampener and also the fuel lines that lead to the engine. It's always the case as you refurbish one part, everything else looks terrible by comparison. We will get round to these parts at some stage, but in the first instance our priority is to see if we can actually get this car running. So we're one major step forward, having refurbished the fuel pump and got that installed. Thinking of refurbishing your fuel pump assembly, there's 4 bits of hardware you're going to need, and you can get everything from these guys here, Westfield. Screws for screwing the pump back together. If you want stainless steel ones, these are M4 16mm machine screws. Here they are here. You can also get the screws for screwing the fuel pump assembly together here as well, together with the nuts and washers. Little screws, self-tapping screws that screw the fuel pump assembly to the chassis, and also the plastic cover to the chassis are self-tapping screws. They are hex self-tapping screws number 14, and I believe they are 13mm in size. So these ones here, once again, if your screws are rusty, I would replace them. The last thing you want to do is lose that plastic cover, because they're about 70 quid secondhand to get another one. If you're planning on replacing the Jubilee clips or hose clamps, try not to use those for fuel pipes. The proper ones to use are these little babies here, known as mini clips. You'll need at least 3 sizes for a D Jetronic pump. We bought some 11 to 13mm, some 14 to 16mm, and some 16 to 18mm. We got the O-rings from eBay from these guys here, Seal Supply UK. They're 33mm times 2mm nitrile O-rings, fuel resistant. Just £2.18 for a pack of 5. If you were doing a D Jetronic fuel rebuild, you'd need slightly bigger hose clamps. We got 2 slightly bigger ones from Stony Racing, the 20 to 22mm ones that you'll need for the thicker pipes.